Mayor and council members. Each year, the Meritorious Conduct Board reviews recommendations for employee awards based on outstanding acts or performances in which a citizen or officer brings credit to the department or community. Today's presentation is to recognize these citizens and employees for their achievements and service to the Mesquite Police Department. Our first award is for the Police Commendation. The Police Commendation Bar may be awarded to any police employee for outstanding contributions to law enforcement through the success of any situation, with such contribution being made in a highly professional degree of accomplishment. The Police Commendation will be presented to Ellen Honorado. Administrative Secretary Ellen Honorado has been with the Mesquite Police Department since 2011. Ellen has trained with other secretaries and is the go-to person in criminal investigations. Ellen is responsible for case preparation and filing, DWI and drug labs, warrants, at-large cases, and WatchGuard body camera videos. Ellen consistently shows that she is extremely dedicated to her job and has an amazing work ethic. She goes above and beyond, working tirelessly to ensure her tasks are completed accurately and efficiently. Our next award is for the Life Saving Award. The Life Saving Bar may be awarded to any employee for the saving of a human life or prolonging a human life to the extent the victim was released to the care of medical authorities. Our first Life Saving Award will be presented to Officer Kenneth Barber and Officer Reed Rose. On June 18, 2021, Officer Barber and Officer Rose were dispatched to an assist fire call. Officer Barber arrived on scene and observed an unconscious male on the ground next to his truck in the parking lot. Officer Barber moved swiftly and began administering CPR to the individual. Officer Rose arrived shortly after and took over chest compressions until the fire department arrived. The officers administered chest compressions for approximately 4 minutes before the fire department took over and were able to get a heartbeat and transport the patient to the hospital. Officer Barber and Officer Rose's swift actions aided in sustaining the patient's life. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Life Saving Award to Officer Kenneth Barber and Officer Reed Rose. Our next Life Saving Award will be presented to Officer Kendall McLeod. On August 24, 2021, Officer Kendall McLeod and MISD Administrator Katie Townsend were working lunch duty at Kimbrough Middle School when a male student began to choke on a piece of food. As the student rushed over to Ms. Townsend, she could see he was unable to breathe and began to strike the student on the back and quickly realized it was not working. Ms. Townsend then began to provide the Heimlich maneuver and provided 2 abdominal thrusts to the student. At this time, Officer McLeod began to take over for Ms. Townsend and delivered 3 proper abdominal thrusts and dislodged the food that was stuck in the student's throat, and he was finally able to breathe. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Life Saving Award to Officer Kendall McLeod. Our next Life Saving Award will be presented to Officer Preston Mooring, Officer Connor LeBaron, and Officer Joshua Osborne. On April 8, 2021, Officers Mooring, Osborne, and LeBaron were dispatched in reference to a male who had been shot. Officer Mooring arrived first and contacted a 17-year-old male with a gunshot wound to his right abdominal area. Officer Mooring applied a Z-Pack dressing to the victim's wound. Officer LeBaron arrived and applied pressure to the wound and determined that the bullet had gone all the way through and exited out of the victim's back. Officer Osborne brought his medical kit and applied Fox chest seal bandages to the victim's wounds. Their efforts reduced the victim's bleeding and prevented it from becoming more serious. Their demeanor kept the victim calm and stable until the Mesquite Fire Department arrived and transported the victim to the hospital. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Life Saving Award to Officer Preston Mooring, Officer Connor LeBaron, and Officer Joshua Osborne. Our next award is for the Certificate of Civic Achievement. The Certificate of Civic Achievement is presented to sworn and non-sworn employees of the department who bring favorable recognition to the department through their involvement in civic affairs while acting in the capacity as a representative of the Mesquite Police Department. The Certificate of Civic Achievement will be presented to Sergeant Tori Roan. Sergeant Roan has for years been civically minded and active in the greater Mesquite community through his involvement with numerous organizations and programs. Sergeant Roan has participated in or led several events with the Citizens Police Academy, the CPA Alumni Association, Crime Watch Associations, the Police Explorer Program, Santa Cop, and various others. He has always represented the department in a positive manner and seeks opportunities to explain the department's mission in a detailed manner, enlightening community members about our good work while taking the time to explain the more complicated aspects of the profession. Recently, an important local community organization, the Mesquite Tri-East chapter of the NAACP, recognized Sergeant Roan's efforts and success in community engagement by awarding him its Community Champion Award at their 2021 awards banquet. This is a prestigious award, and Sergeant Roan's receipt of it reflects favorably on the department. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Certificate of Civic Achievement to Sergeant Tori Roan. The next awards are for the Certificate of Merit. The Certificate of Merit is to be awarded to police employees for outstanding or superior performance in any assignment over a prolonged period. Such performance is to be clearly defined as exceptional, placing them well above other officers or civilians of equal rank or grade. The Certificate of Merit will be presented to Officer Patrick King and Officer Daniel Neindorf. Officer King and Officer Neindorf currently work on a part-time basis for our department's deployment unit. The goal of the deployment unit is to have a unit comprised of officers that have investigative skill sets that aid them in focusing on specific criminal threats, especially violent and property crimes. In May 2021, Officers King and Neindorf were able to work full-time as a deployment unit. In that month, they made 28 arrests, of which 14 were felonies. They also seized more than 200 grams of illegal narcotics, recovered 8 stolen vehicles, and removed 9 firearms off the streets of Mesquite. Since that time, Officer King and Officer Neindorf have assisted patrol and CID by conducting surveillance, interviews, and completing search warrants for vehicles and houses. Their expertise and knowledge of individuals from their own street investigations has allowed them to identify suspects for CID. They have also worked closely with the ATF, DPD, and DPS, assisting with Operation Pegasus. Operation Pegasus was a firearms investigation involving an aftermarket illegal gun part that made a Glock handgun automatic and thus illegal. Through their investigations, multiple arrests were made and numerous guns were taken off the streets of Mesquite. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Certificate of Merit to Officer Patrick King and Officer Daniel Neindorf. Our next Certificate of Merit will be presented to Assistant Chief Doug Yates, Sergeant Brad Meyer, Sergeant Brian Cummings, Retired Sergeant John Alexander, Officer Luke Christofferson, and Officer Jeremy Wood. On December 3, 2021, the Mesquite Police Department experienced one of its darkest days when Officer Richard Houston was shot and killed in the line of duty. Immediately following the shooting, Assistant Chief Doug Yates responded to the hospital where he met with Officer Houston's wife. Assistant Chief Yates had the solemn responsibility to deliver the news that Officer Houston was deceased, and he did so with compassion. From that time forward, he has walked side by side with the family and continues to be there for them. Along with Assistant Chief Yates, Sergeant Brian Cummings would lead several units within the department to ensure a successful funeral service and honor guard ceremony. Assistant Chief Yates and Sergeant Cummings have fostered a bond with the family, which led to them requesting their presence during several important meetings in the months that have followed. Officer Jeremy Wood was notified as a member of the family support team. Officer Wood was not on duty at the time and immediately sprang into action. Officer Wood was tasked with the responsibility of scheduling an officer to be at the Houston residence 24/7 for the next week. Officer Wood worked with multiple agencies as well as our own department to make sure the task was completed. Officer Wood was also tasked with preparing Officer Houston's uniform and accompaniments. Once again, Officer Wood performed this task flawlessly and without hesitation. Officer Luke Christofferson was instrumental in setting up a donation page for the Houston family, which received a significant amount of donations. Officer Christofferson was also instrumental in the planning of the candlelight vigil. This required him to work with several outside organizations as well as internal personnel. Officer Christofferson took on a significant role in planning the funeral. Officer Christofferson took on the task of planning meals during the service as well as coordinating all building room aspects. The amount of planning and coordinating helped the funeral run smoothly. Sergeant Meyer was quick to activate the honor guard and instrumental in immediately getting coverage for Officer Houston. The honor guard stood guard until Officer Houston was laid to rest. This was a huge undertaking, and Sergeant Meyer accepted this responsibility without hesitation. Sergeant John Alexander played a significant role in the preparation of all the events that included traffic escorts. He was responsible for the coordination of multiple traffic escorts throughout the week. Sergeant Alexander spent countless hours researching, planning, and coordinating with other agencies to make sure these could be done efficiently and safely. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Certificate of Merit to Assistant Chief Doug Yates, Sergeant Brad Meyer, Sergeant Brian Cummings, Retired Sergeant John Alexander, Officer Jeremy Wood, and Officer Luke Christofferson. The next award is for the Meritorious Conduct Bar. The Meritorious Conduct Bar may be awarded for a heroic deed and exceptionally meritorious conduct involving exemplary courage, risk, and danger to their personal safety. The Meritorious Conduct Bar will be presented to Officer Christopher Odom. On March 24, 2021, officers were dispatched to the area of Interstate 30 in Big Town in reference to a male walking around with a child and pointing a gun at vehicles. As officers arrived on scene, dispatch continued to receive several additional 911 calls with conflicting reports and locations. Officers continued to search the area, and Officer Odom located the subject near the west entrance of the Pepsi Beverage Company off of Big Town Boulevard. After Officer Odom began giving loud verbal commands, the suspect ran towards the entrance of the Pepsi plant. Fearing the male may enter the business and cause harm to unsuspecting employees, Officer Odom left cover and closed the distance between him and the male suspect. As Officer Odom got closer to the suspect threw the firearm down and started following some of the commands. However, while standing in front of the Pepsi plant, the suspect pulled a pistol out of his waistband area. Officer Odom exercised an extreme calm demeanor and decided not to use deadly force on the armed suspect. As more officers arrived, the suspect eventually threw the pistol down and surrendered. Officer Odom risked his own safety by crossing the road with no cover to engage an armed suspect in an effort to potentially protect innocent victims. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Meritorious Conduct Board to Officer Christopher Odom. Our next awards are for the Citizen Certificate of Merit. The Citizen Certificate of Merit may be awarded to any citizen for outstanding service to the police department or for assistance to police personnel. The Citizen Certificate of Merit will be presented to Gunnery Sergeant Jesus Leza and Gunnery Sergeant Brian McNeil. The Mesquite Police Santa Cop Toy Program is successful because of the support and generosity of our community. This year, the officers of the Santa Cop Committee would like to express gratitude to Gunnery Sergeant Jesus Leza and Gunnery Sergeant Brian McNeil with the United States Marine Corps operating the DFW Toys for Tots campaign. On December 4, 2021, Leza and McNeil contacted the department after learning the Santa Cop Toy Parade was canceled on that day. They were very concerned about the loss in funding and donations from the event and immediately committed extra resource for Santa Cop. Together, Leza and McNeil facilitated 3 large deliveries of toys for Santa Cop. It was the largest contribution we have ever received from Toys for Tots. They did amazing work while representing the United States Marine Corps and completing their mission with Toys for Tots. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Citizen Certificate of Merit to Gunnery Sergeant Jesus Leza and Gunnery Sergeant Brian McNeil. Our next Citizen's Certificate of Merit will be presented to Miss Katie Townsend. On August 24, 2021, Mesquite ISD Administrator Katie Townsend and Officer McLeod were working lunch duty at Kimbrough Middle School when a male student began to choke on a piece of food. As the student rushed over to Miss Townsend, she could see he was unable to breathe and began to strike the student on the back and quickly realized it was not working. Miss Townsend then began to provide the Heimlich maneuver and provided 2 abdominal thrusts to the student. At this time, Officer McLeod began to take over for Miss Townsend and delivered 3 proper abdominal thrusts to dislodge the food that was stuck in the student's throat, and he was finally able to breathe. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Citizen's Certificate of Merit to Katie Townsend. Our next Citizen's Certificate of Merit will be presented to Miss Stephanie Peterson. On Wednesday, November 17, 2021, Miss Peterson observed the subject running out of the Big Dollar Mart located at 1835 Galloway Avenue. Shortly thereafter, she observed the clerk exit the store while staggering. She observed that the individual exiting the store was entering a white vehicle. As the vehicle fled, she followed the suspect in her vehicle as she relayed the coordinates to the 911 dispatcher. As she continued to follow the vehicle, she observed that the driver attempted to cut through the parking lot to get away. Miss Peterson drove her vehicle in a position to block the suspect vehicle from exiting the parking lot. The suspect vehicle rammed her vehicle to get away from her attempts to stop him. Miss Peterson still tried to stop the suspect despite risk to her own personal safety. The suspect's vehicle was later revealed to be the exact identity of a vehicle which had been taken in an aggravated robbery. The suspect she observed leaving the store had just shot the clerk at the Big Dollar Mart while taking a small amount of money with him. The crime ended up being a capital murder case. A hero is one who is admired for their courage. Miss Peterson displayed exemplary courage and risk to her own personal safety, and her acts helped hold a capital murder suspect responsible for his actions. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to award the Citizen's Certificate of Merit to Stephanie Peterson. Now, we would like to recognize the Civilian of the Year. Sylvia Encenia has been employed by the Mesquite Police Department for 7 years, and she works as one of the department's senior administrative law enforcement coordinators. Sylvia works in police administration, and her responsibilities include dealing with citizens who want to speak to the chief, assisting with the department's budget, maintaining the chief's schedules, keeping up with department personnel files, maintaining the police seizure budget, coordinating items to be placed on the council agenda, and many other tasks. The senior administrative law enforcement coordinators basically do everything that it takes to keep police administration running smoothly. Although there have historically been 3 administrative coordinator positions in the chief's office, it has recently been decreased to 2 positions, and due to a retirement in 2021, Sylvia spent a significant part of the year handling the administrative duties of police administration by herself. It should be noted that this period involved training a new chief and assistant chief, as well as training a new senior administrative law enforcement coordinator once one was selected. She is always willing to do whatever it takes to help the department. In addition to her normal duties, Sylvia is quick to volunteer her own time for events that have helped the department and the community, such as the Santa Cop program. Sylvia does all this with a positive attitude and with little fanfare. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to recognize Sylvia Encenia with the Civilian of the Year Award for 2021. Next, we would like to recognize the recipient of the Sergeant H. Kent Tyler Award. Officer Mike Smith is a 15-year veteran of the Mesquite Police Department. He is a dedicated and knowledgeable officer who is always willing to take on extra responsibilities for the department. Although he carries a heavy caseload as a major crimes detective, crisis negotiator, and ATF task force officer, he consistently works extra shifts in patrol and the jail to ensure that we have coverage. Officer Smith has performed in an exemplary manner for many years and can always be relied upon for excellent work. One example of the trust that the Mesquite Police Department places in Officer Smith is he was the primary assigned investigator on Officer Houston's murder. Officer Smith was selected by a committee composed of fellow officers and departmental supervisors to receive this award. The Mesquite Police Department is proud to honor Officer Mike Smith with the Sergeant H. Kent Tyler Award for 2021. Our next presentation is the Medal for Valor and Police Cross. The Medal for Valor is to be awarded for exceptional bravery at imminent risk of serious bodily injury, the recipient having demonstrated exceptional courage by performing a voluntary course of action in an extremely dangerous situation. The Police Cross is to be awarded where an employee lost his life in the performance of duty under honorable circumstances. On April 26, 2021, Mesquite Police K-9 Officer Cosmo was feloniously killed in the line of duty by an aggravated robbery suspect. K-9 Cosmo honorably and valiantly served the citizens of Mesquite and members of the police department for approximately 4 years prior to his death. During his tenure with the Mesquite Police Department, K-9 Cosmo had 779 K-9 deployments. These deployments assisted with locating and arresting 204 criminal suspects and the seizure of nearly 190 pounds of narcotics. K-9 Cosmo was a faithful and loyal partner to his handler, Officer Jason Crawford. He was a beloved member of our department. The Mesquite Police Department presents the Medal for Valor and Police Cross to Officer Jason Crawford for K-9 Cosmo. Our final presentation is the Medal of Honor and Police Cross. The Police Medal of Honor is awarded to a police employee who voluntarily distinguishes themselves conspicuously by gallantry and extraordinary heroism. Officer Richard Houston honorably served the Mesquite Police Department in various capacities throughout his 20 years of service. On December 3, 2021, Officer Houston was feloniously killed while responding to a disturbance call. Officer Houston was a mentor and a friend to many. He was a police officer through and through and a devout follower of Christ. Richard was smart, compassionate, fun-loving, and steadfast in his friendships and duties as an officer. Officer Houston formed so many wonderful bonds throughout his career that inspired so many to be better than they were, to cherish the calling of a police officer, and to always stay strong. His impact to the department cannot be understated. The Mesquite Police Department presents the Medal of Honor and Police Cross to the family of Officer Richard Lee Houston II. This concludes our presentation. At this time, I'd like to thank City Manager Cliff Kahili, Mayor Dan Aleman, and the City Council members for allowing us to have this setting to honor our officers and civilians, not only in front of our peer group, but in front of the community as well. Thank you.